What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the second episode of Hard Work is Undefeated. So today we have a special guest who is near and dear to my heart. He actually was my strength coach when I played in Canada. So we're going to let him introduce himself. He's going to tell us a little about himself. He's going to tell us some of his story. He has some amazing stories in terms of being a strength coach and where he's gone and what he's done with it. So I'm going to let him introduce himself and talk a little bit about his story.
Hey guys, Coach Jake Doan. I'm in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, Canada. Like Marcus said, I'm a strength and conditioning coach. Currently privately. I no longer do university, but we'll go through that a little bit more. So like Marcus said, I met him, it was 2013?
Yep, 2013. I had just left the U.S. to go to Canada.
Yeah. So there's some story in between my fitness journey and where we are now. I've always been an athlete, basketball player, football player. It just came naturally to me to just coach, developing athletes. Through the time I was actually playing, I coached basketball while I was in high school still. So it was just something that came really naturally to me. After playing a couple years of college ball myself, I actually was injured in 2011. So previous to meeting Marcus, I was jumped by a group of individuals and left with numerous injuries, including head trauma. I had basically become completely blind in my right eye. Occipital neuralgia, which is a chronic pain disorder in my neck. And I think at the time I met you, Marcus, I was receiving just like nerve injections at that time for treatment. So every 56 days I was getting injections to basically numb the nerves in my neck, to kind of make it through my days with pain. So I actually went back to school after a year of being bedridden and physiotherapy, and took a program called Fitness and Health Promotions here in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. And through that time, I had a placement, an option as a placement, and I chose to take it at Algoma University, which is where I met Marcus.
I leave Kirtland in May of 2013, I believe. I ended up walking on. I actually came to Algoma on accident because it was with my Russian roommate Artem. He was getting recruited by Coach Corey, and I had to drive him because he didn't have an American license and he didn't have a car. So I drive him up. I currently have a broken fifth metatarsal, so I'm not supposed to be playing. So I ended up somehow playing anyways, and I think I hit like 7 threes straight in the game, and Tom offered me on the spot. I actually was not supposed to go to Algoma. I was looking to go somewhere else, but it just seemed I wanted to play overseas, and it seemed like the right place to be. But let's touch on your strength and conditioning background. What made you get into that? Because I remember the reason I actually left Algoma and went to Lake State is because of you and how much you told me you loved the program, and I basically just mimicked what you did, and it got us where we are now. So let's talk about what got you into that.
So I feel like being an individual who suffered from pain and suffered from overcoming injuries myself. It was easy field for me to jump into, because you receive this reward of constantly developing people and bettering people, and like especially like for someone like you who dealt with an injury and then saw drastic improvements from having someone like myself in your life, like and got, it's not just about like the performance side of things, but having someone, like you say, it changed your life and direction. having someone like that in your life and being that person to other people, there's nothing more rewarding than actually changing, like someone saying you changed my life.
Yes.
It doesn't matter the financial gain behind it. Having someone like literally say, I was on this path and no idea where I was going, and then boom, like you set me on my like dream path. That's like the best thing. So like for me, that was the biggest thing. And just, and then training individuals who have like issues like myself, where they're dealing with pain, and just understanding that there's methods of overcoming things to a certain degree. Because not everybody goes into a situation like having a trainer or a strength and conditioning coach with this healthy mindset like yourself, you know, of improvement. A lot of people are coming to you and they've almost like given up hope, and that, you know, and that's why they're kind of knocking on your door. So I feel like that for me was the biggest thing. And then like being in fitness and health promotions at Sault College, and then going to like I continued my undergraduate. I ended up continuing it in Wales instead of going to Lake State and doing the 2-year program here and 2-year program there.
Right.
I thought it was a better opportunity for me to go overseas at that time because of my anxiety. You know, part of that was just my anxiety issues with being local.
Right.
It was my opportunity to just disengage and leave.
So can we go into a little detail about Wales? Because when you were over there, man, it seemed like you were having the greatest time, everything. Is that where you did your bodybuilding competition as well?
That is, yeah. So, yeah. So what ended up happening actually, in the time period between when, so I coached you, and then I actually thought I'm going to stay in a Canadian university. And I decided to go to Lakehead University, which is in Thunder Bay, Ontario.
Right, I remember that.
So it's 8 hours north of here. And the coach at that time was just coming off a leave of absence. He was working with the Red Claws in Portland, Maine, Scott Morrison. He's now the assistant coach of the Boston Celtics. So, but he had taken a leave from coaching the men's team there. And I kind of immediately jumped on board as a strength and conditioning coach at Lakehead. And that kind of propelled my path pretty quickly to going down and spending some time in Maine with Scott, and seeing what they did at a professional level of basketball. It was amazing. So at the time it was the D League. Now it's the G League.
Right.
If you're looking for Red Claws, it's the G League now. And seeing that on court action, and the way the athletes train, that are like they're just getting a taste of what the NBA is like fully like, and the amount that they need to train in the G League to get to that full-time contract with the Celtics, you know, it's amazing to see the effort levels that these people are putting in at that G League. They worked out at a Gold's Gym, like in between, like they had this back room there. Like literally, they have an on-court practice. They'd be shooting for hours, and then they'd go to Gold's Gym, and they were doing some performance training there. It was just amazing,
right,
to see. And then I actually had an opportunity to meet Brian Doe with the Celtics, who's the strength and conditioning coach there, and he's the head strength and conditioning coach. And he, you know, we sat down. We were sitting. It was an Atlanta Hawks game. We were sitting on the sideline and just talking about training and about what I'd had for education. And he basically was like, "You need to continue." He, you know, because at that time you couldn't be on staff with the Celtics unless you had a master's of science. So Brian was like, "Man, finish your undergrad, you know, continue on to a master's." Like we basically had talked about a couple of the athletes in the G League team that, you know, had some movement pattern issues, some injuries that were kind of not being overseen, and my opinion on certain things and aspects.
Right.
And he basically said, man, finish your university. You could see yourself being in this position for sure someday.
Man, that's
Not
amazing.
really, yeah, not really like my path of where I would consider going, but amazing to sit there and, Dominique Wilkins walked by and I was like, okay, all right. Like, yeah, this is all right.
Hold your composure. Hold your composure.
Yeah, be professional. Take
Right.
a deep breath. I met Danny Ainge and stuff like that. Like it was an opportunity to shake his hand, and
Man.
I was trying not to be starstruck. Try not to think of like all the video I've seen of him playing. Like,
But that's so hard, right? Like just all like, man, he's right here. But
it really is, and like it's one of those things where you have to like realize that this is their everyday lives and like they're people too.
Right.
And I'm not like a starstruck person typically, but like this is my whole childhood was like basketball, and then you're seeing people that are like legends, so yeah, that was difficult.
That's crazy. So what would you
Yeah.
say the differences in obviously there are some differences, but so let's go into some details in terms of the differences of the training regimens, because you said you work with high school kids, you obviously work with the colleges at a high level, then going to be around people in the D League and in the NBA. Like, what are the differences in the like training regimens? Like, what did you see the differences between like the top guys and guys who were just barely on the team? Like, can you give our kids who are looking to make it there one day just some insight on what that looks like?
Yeah, I think that like especially really early, yeah, like when we're looking at like youth basketball and stuff, and you're attempting to develop like the basic skills. I think it's so very important that early on that you really get that good foundation. You're dribbling with your head up and you're using both hands equally. I think that stuff like that is should be cemented in us very early on, because you can see kind of that highlighted as you go through the years. Like if someone hasn't developed a left-handed layup, like or they're just very dominant to their right hand if that's their dominant hand. I think that that's a big thing in the youth kind of ranks. As you get on and you get into more, I would say, competitive play, and your high school team, your rep teams, your travel teams and stuff like that. I feel like there's a switch there at some point in time where I think kids need to learn to turn their ego off almost a little bit and learn how to play a team game, because I feel like that's one of the most common things nowadays is that people in that rank, they're like going from high school and they're attempting to get to college, play college ball and stuff like that. And I find that they want to be an all-star. Everybody wants to be an all-star, which is fantastic. And I think there's obviously a lot of athletes out there that have the talent and capability of doing that, but then they forget that it's a five-player team. And coaches can see that, scouts can see that and stuff like that. And I think as a kid, I wish I'd realized that, and even myself, been more of a team player.
Right.
And not that I was a selfish player, but I wish I'd really like played one more pass. It got a teammate involved. Things that they praise or hate LeBron James for, that extra pass. Kind of thing. I think that that's like a big thing nowadays, is kind of putting your ego aside, playing the team game, and realizing it is a team sport. And development wise at that stage is, I think because of the ego, is doing things that you're like, even like in your early season games and stuff like that, and realizing, okay, if we have, a 16 game schedule and stuff like that, early in the season, I'm going to work on things that I'm not good at, even in a game setting.
Right.
Because yes, it's about winning that game, obviously, but at the same time, at that competitive level and level of pressure and stuff like that, you want to do things that you're not good at. And I feel like people have a really hard time with that concept because you want to do good, right? Your performance wants to be a certain level.
Mm-hmm.
But if you never practice those things that you're not the best at, you're never going to improve. And the best setting for that is in a game setting
Mm-hmm.
where that pressure is highest. You start getting comfortable with, you know, your mid-range jumper when an actual defender, not your teammate, is pressuring you.
Right.
You know,
That's
you're
a
going to
whole
see
different
drastic improvement. Yeah. So, you know, that, and then, you know, obviously university level is just a completely different beast. And I think at that time, a lot of people step back and they get really molded at that time period.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that we see a drastic uh, increase in like the next like 5 to 10 years of actual individualized training within the team atmosphere of sports. I think because there's such an amazing amount of like kinesiologists, strength conditioning coaches, and all these health professionals in the field, I feel like people like yourself spending a lot of time with individuals working on their skill development and their performance. I feel like we need more people like you dealing with teams and helping coaches understand that yes, there's on court team stuff and there has to be individualized training
Right.
for athletes, because that whole concept of giving everybody a team plan, you know, a weight training plan or stuff like that. Yeah, cookie cutter plan for like, and it's like for myself even, you got to deal with certain aspects. Right. Like as an example, Algoma, I had to do the cookie cutter thing. I only had certain amount of times with you guys as athletes, but then an athlete like yourself, you would know I did nothing cookie cutter about training you, training guys like Jamal or Brett. None of that was cookie cutter. But for the people that weren't getting in there on their own, you know, like wants and needs, like there were certain people we never saw in the weight room.
Oh, at all.
Right. I'm not going to get into listing any of those people, but you know, those are the people that you hand them a cookie cutter plan and you hope that they're getting in there, even when, you know, even when you're telling them they have to get in there, they're still not in some cases. And I feel like you, to a certain extent, you kind of have to do that but you want to get away from that. Mm-hmm. Every athlete is different. You know, especially in basketball, there's the drastic height differences. I could say at the G League level, it's the intensity that people bring because they're still trying to improve and show coaches and scouts and the whoever is monitoring their training at that point in time, on court or off. They're trying to show that they want to be at the next level or they belong at the next level. Right. And I think I've seen a lot of like guys at that time period when I was there. Chris Babb, he was there. I could say like with an athlete like him on court, like I literally stood there till my arm hurt, and he just did floaters over me. Like the drive that he had, you know, it shows that he's able to play at that level. Something different. Like if you look back through my Instagram, you'd see so many different things that like I like to develop new skills. It doesn't matter if it's athletic or not. I like, you know, I built a squat rack behind me.
Man, I was looking at that. They just lifted our at-home orders, and so they let us get the moving around a little bit. I was going to ask you how to build it because I was definitely ready, Jake. I was ready.
I've had a couple like companies actually reach out to me and they're like, "Can you send us the dimensions? Can you give us the details?" Like, you know, like, and I literally like put it in like almost like an AutoCAD, like measurements and which wood I use and what, you know, a shopping list of how many boards you need for like this garage gym. kind of
Everything looks
company,
great.
and it's structurally sound. It holds the weight I use. Like, I'm not powerlifting or anything, but I'm pretty sure it would handle up to like 300, 400 pounds easily. But I decided I was going to go to finish my undergrad because of my kind of guidance from Brian with the Celtics. And Sioux College actually has this affiliation with this university in Wales, of all places. So Wales, United Kingdom. People are going to have to look it up, because when I found out there was a university there, I had no idea where it was. I knew where the United Kingdom was, but I didn't really know where Wales was. And went over there, and immediately, like, I realized, like, the university itself, the rugby team immediately reached out to me because they kind of heard about, like, this Canadian who's, coming into the personal training field. And excuse me. The rugby team kind of got a hold of me, so I started working with some of their athletes. And like, that was like within like the first 4 weeks of me being there. And then I realized, like, over there in the UK, they have these, they call them societies instead of it being like a club. So I was like researching all these societies, like what different ones the university wasn't even open when we got there. It was like, I think it was like the first 3 weeks before the university actually started, of our time there. And I was like just researching what could the university could possibly have once it opens. And this mass society thing came up, and it wasn't actually at our university, but what it was like a series of different exercise clubs jammed within one society. So they had weightlifting, so the Olympic weightlifting, which is, your clean and your snatch, your clean and press and your snatch. And then they had powerlifting, which is just your deadlift, your squat, and your bench. And then they actually had strongman competitions, regionally and nationally. And then at the end of the year, it kind of all finished in this physique contest, so bodybuilding physique contest. And I was super interested in that, but they didn't even have it at our university. So what I did was I decided, you know what, I'm going to see what it takes to open up this society, like a branch at our university. So I did that because me.
So you go all the way to Wales and you open. Okay, I see you, Jake.
So I opened the society at my university, and like all it did was basically allow me to provide like people like at our university as well. Like there was a small group of people that I did free classes for, like, because there's students and stuff like that don't have like the HIIT training circuit style classes and stuff like that. So there's a small group of people that I did that for. I did a nutrition seminar for free, just kind of informing people like about proper nutrition. And I feel like that was like the whole purpose of like the mass society. So it's the Muscular Athletic Student Society. So it's called MASS. Happy I did. It was an experience.
So what I've taken is like you've had to, I always talk to my kids about not making excuses and making adjustments. Like for the last few years, your entire life has been an adjustment. And like during this time that we had of this the coronavirus, there were a lot of people complaining because they had to make an adjustment basically to just stay in the house. But a person like you has to make an adjustment every single day to live. So I appreciate that so much, and just you being able to share all of this knowledge and your story with my listeners. So my last thing is about youth strength coaches. Like, how should they start? Like younger kids, should they start with body weights? Should they give them weights? When should weights be introduced? I have my own philosophy, but obviously you're the strength coach's favorite strength coach. So let's touch on
Yeah.
youth, on the youth part.
Yeah. So I think that there's kind of this touchy subject where parents kind of always went with that. Like, I don't know who said it at one point in time. There's probably a study done where, parents said about lifting weights isn't healthy for young, athletes and stuff like that. They're worried about they're worried about their growth plates
Mm-hmm. I've
and
heard that one.
and damaging the growth plates, which is it's very understandable. In a controlled setting and healthy setting, it's fine for a young athlete to lift weights, especially if they're receiving one-on-one training. It's very easy.
Mm-hmm.
Even in a team setting where you have a smaller group of people, and you're able to provide proper instruction to a young athlete,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, I believe it's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I would never say to a parent that it's unhealthy, especially now the studies are showing that it can actually strengthen. Like high impact training can strengthen your bones. Obviously, like you want to watch and make sure that kids are performing movements in a healthy manner
Right.
before they're ever using weights in general. But I do think it's healthy, and your body adjusts to the strain and stresses we put on it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, it's all about progressively adapting to the strains we're applying to our body. That's what weightlifting is.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you get stronger. So I definitely think that it's something that children should get involved with early on, because getting those movement patterns and developing the ability to strengthen within those movement patterns, like in a movement like a jump squat and stuff like that, and adding resistance to your body, whether it's a vest. I personally believe that with the proper movement patterns in place and having quality coaching, like especially on an individual basis, it's a lot easier to get those movement patterns down. If you're dealing with a squat and then adding weight, it's a lot easier to deal with that athlete on an individual basis. But I think it's safe as well as in a team setting, as long as you're working on those movement patterns. Would I be using a weighted vest and doing drop downs from a plyo box, and doing extreme high impact stuff? Probably not. But using weight is your body's, or our, sorry, not our body. It's our way of applying stress on the body.
Mm-hmm.
And you progressively adapt to the amount of resistance you apply to yourself. Right. That's why, squatting 200 pounds, 1 week, in a couple of weeks, you're able to squat a little bit more. It's because your body's adapted to that strain. So same thing, it affects a child the same way. If you're applying stress and strain to them, they're going to develop and progress.
Right. So
to that
typically,
resistance.
When we hear about like people who aren't in the fitness world, they hear stress and they think about mental stress and stress. They don't think of stress as a good thing. So can we touch on how stress in terms of resistance is actually in good proportion? It's good for the body. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, applying stress to like a muscle group, like it's always easiest to demonstrate a bicep curl. Right. I feel like everyone understands a bicep curl. So all I'm doing is lifting my hand. Mm-hmm. Now the bicep is a muscle that's not really effective for sport unless it's for show. It's kind of one of the show muscles.
Yeah.
That strain on the bicep, depending on how you're applying that strain and kind of the methodology you're using. So whether you're trying to develop muscular endurance. So these are factors that a lot of like parents wouldn't even really understand. If you're, for a basketball player, you want to develop muscular endurance so that you're able to resist strain or stress on your body during a game. so that your body doesn't wear down.
Right. So like people
Um,
wearing on you, bumping and stuff like that.
yeah. So I mean, like especially the smaller muscle groups, we use pads, when you're doing a layup so that your body's able to kind of feel that stress of someone bumping into you. You do resistance dribbling where you're dribbling into a teammate and they're pushing back physically against you so that you're able to do that in a game. If you never do things like that, how are you going to resist that in a game effectively?
Right.
If all of a sudden, if you have a completely non-contact coach and you never like ever, touch, foul, do anything on court in training, and then all of a sudden you go into a game and the defender bumps into you, and it's gonna literally shock your system, your nervous system, your muscles, tendons, ligaments, everything. It's gonna jar you, and it's because your body's never been with and had that strain pressed upon it. So we apply those stresses on you in practice so that you're able to endure them in a game. We're not just hitting you with a bag because we think it's fun.
Right.
Those little shocks will help you become a stronger athlete in that kind of controlled environment of practice, and so that in a game that you're able to resist that.
Man,
And I think that's something it's very difficult for a parent to understand, or even an athlete. A lot of times we're just doing that in a practice and the kid doesn't understand this is actually effective.
Yeah.
And it's not just about disrupting your layup or making you have a hard time during doing a layup. You're going to get bumped into by a brick wall someday of a player who's stronger, bigger than you possibly. And that's why we do that stuff in practice.
Right. And I think, like, I've always, just because of the background, I've always been able to do a great job of explaining that. Like, the reasons, it was always, when I was growing up, it was just do this because I said do it. Now I can explain the reason why we're doing this is because X, Y, and Z, and this is going to happen in the game, and we want to be able to counteract that. So that's some great stuff. So let's talk about the hoodie, man. The show muscle, go muscle. Where did this come from?
So the actual term itself came from a gym teacher in my high school, Mike Cowan. I would go up and I would just crush weights. Like, I ate iron in high school. I loved it. Now it quickly became a thing in our high school because Mike, Mr. Cowan at the time, he trained pro hockey players, high level hockey players, like with the OHL, and prospective athletes in the future for hockey. And he's one of these guys. He's like hard nosed, like just tell you how it is. And I think I came down one day from the weight room and like I had an arm pump on, and he was kind of like looked at me and it was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, just lifting some weights, man. Just trying to get bigger for basketball. And he was like, "Well, basketball? How does doing a bicep curl help you with basketball?" And I was like, I mean, I was in like grade 10 and I was like lifting weights. Like, I thought I knew everything, right?
Right.
He's like, that's all show muscle. This is all go muscle. And he's pointing at himself. And like, he literally was like, this guy was like, obviously physically looked the part of a gym teacher, was built, like just a powerhouse, run to work, bike to work, like was just that type of guy. And he basically sat me down one day and he was like, "Jake, you're putting yourself through all this strain in the weight room and working hard." He's like, "You're working hard, yeah, but is it effective for what you want, the end result?" And it wasn't. It was not. Doing bench press, even for someone who, I was trying out like for Team Ontario stuff, like JDP basketball in Canada, and it's like your stepping stone to team, like your Team Ontario and Team Canada eventually. And I just wanted to be a better basketball player.
Right.
And I thought doing curls was going to help me. And he just sat me down and was like, man, you need to do things that you're doing on court, like actual go muscle, like your actual, what's your end result? Like, don't just go in there and put strain on yourself. Do things that are effective for the sport you're playing.
Right.
You know, I feel like a lot of athletes, even like basketball players, we get into squats and we get into all the things, like we get into like this competitive nature with our teammates and stuff.
Oh,
And
what's
that
that
stuff's
about?
great. Um, and and I feel like we don't do a lot of the little things. Like,
Yeah.
why does coach make us do like I call them ice skaters, but like you're hopping from one foot to the
Right.
other foot and you're properly landing and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, why do we do single leg deadlifts, you know, and stuff like that, balancing on one foot and you know, trying to do a lot of balance stuff like early on. And you don't think of that as a kid. I feel like you don't understand like how much that those little things are benefiting you later on.
Right.
Any sort of fast movement, you know, doing resistance band lateral steps and stuff, and running with resistance bands, stuff like that, medicine ball throws. Like, there's one thing as like a basketball, like just because it's really easy to explain, resistance ball throws and stuff like that, and how it's gonna, like, you're applying resistance by putting weight in your hands that is more than a basketball,
Right.
and we're throwing it. So that's a mimic of an actual movement we're going to do on court, and we're going to develop speed and power right here.
Right.
Now, is that more beneficial than doing a bench press? Yes. You know, how often are we on a basketball court and have our knuckles pointed down and pressing like this?
Yep.
We don't have a hockey stick in our hands. You know, it's stuff like that. Medicine ball throws, overhead, slams, any sort of twisting motions and stuff like that. Those are going to be the, like, when using resistance, like an actual, and not getting into the conditioning side and doing all the cardiovascular stuff that you need to do for basketball. But that's a very easy example of kind of the breakdown of why show muscle, go muscle is like important to me, for people to understand that there's different methodologies for getting these wants and needs. And like, people come to me, and I'm not saying this is like you're doing a physique show, but like, I want to look better. I want to, you know, I want to feel healthier in that mentally, physically aspect. That's the show muscle. And then the go muscle is more of the athletic training and stuff that I get into with like hockey players and basketball players in our community and stuff like that.
Right. Right. Man,
So
that the design is dope, man. I love it.
yeah.
Show muscles regular, then go muscle. It's got that little grit to it, you know.
Quick.
I like it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So,
yeah.
The last thing before we get out of here, my players think I'm playing sometimes when I tell them I used to go to the gym 3 times a day. And you actually have a picture of me on Instagram from 2013, 2014, one of them, where I was asleep before we play open gym. Can you just give them what it looked like, just a little bit of?
So you want me to literally brag for you?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I could honestly say flat out, like, you're one of the hard, like, so we spoke about like me training at all these levels, right? All the way up to the professional level in basketball. And I can honestly say you're one of the hardest working people I've met along the way. And like the thing about like 3 a days, okay, yeah, you would train in the morning, you have a shoot around, but some days, like, it literally would drive me nuts because I'd leave the gym, like I'd be there in the morning or something, I'd leave, I'd go home, like, and I'd come back and you'd still be at the court, and I'd be like, did you leave? Like, so it's not just like that one time. I didn't just catch you sleeping one time on court. Like, it was multiple times. I'd literally kick you before we needed to like literally play.
Yeah. And
yeah, no, he's not lying to you guys. If you're listening to this, it's not all talk. He actually did that. He, on court trained, and then like, even more so when you were overcoming like your injury and training, like training at that, I think I really look back at that time when you were kind of overcoming the adversity of having an injury, that your work ethic, then you didn't really like get down on yourself. You're just, I remember you coming to me one day and you're like, Jake, what can I do right now? Like, what am I able to do right now? And like, you put on so much like muscle during that time period. You're like a completely different person.
Yeah.
Your girlfriend was thanking me.
Now my
And
wife, you know.
now your wife. Yeah. Sorry. And the things there were like, I really look at you at that time period and I'm like, that's awesome. When you actually got back to playing, it was amazing for you to see that never stopped, that you just kept, you were like, now I'm able to do more and I'm not going to take it for granted and just go and, you know, go back to, or not back to, but like just, you know, I could play now, so I'm not going to do the 2-a-days, you know, and the encore, you know, you kept just going. You're like, what, add more to my plate, just give me more to eat. And you just, you really set a tone for a lot of the people that were there that were not working as hard as you. They had to keep up. So like there were certain people that were like starting to notice like the development you had made. And then obviously that shows like for your following years at Lake State, like how well you did there and now where you are now helping other people. If you shared that message at all with them, whether they take it for what it, you know, for what you're saying or not,
Right.
You're sharing that message with them and hopefully they're taking away from it that it doesn't, none of this just comes easy. You know, the struggle, like they say, the struggle is real. Like if you're not struggling and everything is just easy to you, you're not doing it properly. You need to stress yourself. You need the resistance. You need people around you, the environment to be a strong environment, have people push you. That's why we have people like you or people, you know, that you're training, have people like you. Your athletes should be coming to you and saying, coach, what is there more I can do?
Right.
Can I spend a little bit more time with you here? You know, and I know you've trained athletes that have like, I look at now and I'm like, there's a couple people in the community where I'm like, wow, I never thought they would actually be basketball players. Like,
Yeah.
just, you know, but yeah, like I know personally, like for me, there's some days where I physically have a tough time getting out of bed, like with my pain,
Right.
that I know that I could just turn it off. It just sit there. But like, what does that do for everybody else?
Yeah.
You know, when I could provide information to other people and, you know, pass on my struggles and stuff like that. I think that's why people like yourself found it so easy to come to people like someone like me, is because it was so easy to say, well, this guy's struggling on a daily basis to do things like just moving around. Like I can't really say no, you know, I can't really say I need to stop. I need a breather, you know, having someone like me standing there. Now, having someone like yourself who's been through the struggle of being injured and then coaching people, you know, to better themselves, become a better athlete and stuff like that. If you're not able to preach and then take that and run with it, like coaching wise, like what are we doing?
Yeah.
You know,
Without a doubt.
hopefully it's not always the, you know, my parents put me in this camp, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I know that a person like you is the type of person that can instill some things into an athlete when they come into a camp like yours, even if they are that child who their parent put them in, that you can actually make them invest in themselves and you want to play and have fun playing and stuff like that. You're definitely the type of person that's fun loving and stuff like that. So it's nice to see, like, man, the second you got on and you're laughing, like the second I heard your laugh, it was, man, it put a smile on my face. So yeah, I hope that your kids are listening and they understand that that all this they're doing, like the training, everything like that, there's an end goal, and they can stay positive about it, and hopefully like continue to get your guidance, because like I said, Marcus, you are one of my favorite athletes that I've trained throughout the years, and definitely one of the hardest working. So hats off to you about that.
Appreciate that, man. Jake, I appreciate you hopping on this call for me. I know we went a little longer than expected, but I appreciate you sharing everything.
Time flew by.
And I hope our listeners take something from this and don't take a day for granted, and give it everything they got, and they learn that hard work is undefeated, because you've done a lot, man.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you, Jake. If there was no Jake Doan, there would be no Grindhouse basketball. I can truly, I can honestly say that, because you made me what I was like, man, I need to go do what he does. So I'm gonna stop being a social worker and I'm gonna go do that. So
Yeah.
and I made it happen. And I appreciate you just being there and giving me guidance and telling me about the program, and they accepted me like family, and now we're here. I appreciate you, man.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. No problem.